What's going on, everybody? This is Jeff Hillen with Selling Stories, where we discuss the struggles, successes, and life lessons learned through sales and in sales. And in sales, to perform your best, you need to feel your best. Dr. Kirten, how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing well, Jeff. Thank you for having me on.
So I got connected with you through one of my first podcast episode, actually, Brian Tiedemann, and he told me I had to connect with you. You've got some crazy stories to tell. And, you're a surgeon, you're CEO of a company called KLORA. So I was hoping you could let people know, the story of when you were in residency and how that changed your life and what you found out about.
Yeah, so a little background. My background is in foot and ankle surgery. I'm a podiatrist and also a nutritionist. I just graduated school last year in nutrition, a degree in nutrition. And that all started when I was in finishing up residency at Englewood Hospital in New Jersey. My chief of orthopedics wanted me to go to Asia at a hospital called Civil Hospital. It's got 6,000 beds. It's Asia's largest hospital, and it was a
Wow.
good opportunity. He knew that I was kind of hungry to do more cases before I graduated, and said, "Hey, this would be a good opportunity for you to experience a different country, different surgical technique, and just have like some diversity in your training before you leave." Because in residency, which is basically training after med school before you become your own practitioner and on your own, you get to have like free reign of learning new things from different subspecialties: plastic surgery, vascular surgery, orthopedics, general, all different types of specialties. And once you graduate, that's it. You can't really step in the OR legally.
You need to
Eh,
start making money then, right? You got to stop
yeah,
playing around learning things. You got to make some
exactly.
money.
Yeah, exactly. It's time to make some money. It's time to buy that whatever toy you wanted to buy your whole
There
life,
you go.
and treat yourself. So I went. It was a great experience. Did a ton of cases. Got to learn a lot of new perspectives on life and just how sometimes we take for granted what we have here and the access to healthcare we have here, even though it might be a little bit bureaucratic and hard to get.
Sure.
So while I was there, the last week I was there, unfortunately, I got this horrible E. coli infection that made me just destroyed me. And this was in 2017, 2016. Yeah, October 2016. And, when you're young, you're invincible and you feel like, oh, I'll just take some antibiotics and I'll be fine. And that's exactly what happened. I came back home to the United States. Everything was dandy. And then, like, about 6 months later, I started out of nowhere. And this was when my whole life, I've really spent a good portion of it trying to go out of my way to be healthy, preserve my youth, and kind of preserve my mind and body as best as I can. I
Hmm.
think I've done a good job so far, but
Yeah, you
it
look great for 85, man. You look great.
was yeah. Um, and in the summer of 2017, something weird happened where I started waking up in the middle of the night with left lower quadrant pain around the stomach, night sweats. Didn't think anything of it. I was in the best shape of my life. I was really happy. I just graduated residency. I got my dream job, bought a
Hmm.
new car, was going in the city. I had this great apartment. Everything was fine. No stress in life. Everything was fantastic. It was the summer, seeing my friends. And then I started losing a pound a week. Didn't think anything of
Oh,
it. October rolls around a year later, and I'm down 40 pounds at this point. So I'm 5'8", 150, 160 on a good week and in good shape. And at that time, by the end of 2017, 2018, that whole year, I was around 110, 115 pounds.
I have
Horrible.
to imagine people were saying to you, like, hey, man, what's going on?
Yeah. And remember, I was like just graduating school. So this is my first job. I was not even a year into my own job. And around 6 months in, my boss was like, "Hey, man, like, are you okay? You
Yeah.
eating enough?" And that was the worst thing that someone could tell me was, "Hey, are you eating enough?" Because it was
Yeah.
frustrating. I was eating more than anyone could think of. In fact, uh, this started my journey into seeing a bunch of GI specialists, a bunch of different doctors, everything under the sun. I saw a primary care doctor, rheumatologist. I had every blood work known to man done. Everything came out negative. And then I started getting a series of scopes done. What that means is that in GI, you have endoscopy, upper GI, where they stick a tube down your throat, and colonoscopy, where they check your colon and all your whole digestive system and your large intestine. And I had about like 7 to 8 of those to date. Actually, I just had my 10th one, which I'll talk about later.
Yeah.
3 weeks ago. There's a silver lining to the story, I promise. And what was frustrating was, the first few times they found nothing, and then eventually, I guess something was what was wrong with my whole GI tract, and they would find some inflammation and just write me off as someone with Crohn's disease or IBD, which stands for irritable bowel disease or irritable bowel syndrome, IBS.
Yep.
And that started my journey into pharmaceutical medication, which I never wanted to take. Like I said, my whole life I was someone that would go out of my way to eat healthy and be well. And there was no history of this type of disease in my family. I had no history of really eating poorly. I thought my microbiome was very healthy. It was just something that was kind of out of picture and out of touch with me. And that was really tough because here I am in the prime of my life, in my 28, 29-year-old life, making good money, trying to be active, single male going out, right?
Yeah.
Trying to be a surgeon, trying to build my practice. And I'm sitting at 110 pounds, barely able to work out, barely able to walk around without like pain and not being able to sleep. It was really difficult.
And I was going to say, just to kind of have everybody segue into this. I mean, I know you're going to talk about kind of where you're currently at, but when you were going through residency and you decided you were going to be a surgeon, you weren't also looking to get into all the things you're doing today, right? This actually happened because of what you went through.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So my plan was I've always like had an interest in business and architecture and like interior design and stuff like that, but
Yeah.
never really wanted to get into it until never really wanted to get into gut health, biohacking, and preserving longevity and health span until this happened to me. So there is a
Yeah.
silver lining to it for sure. So you have to really like in life, if something bad happens to you or something good happens to you, you have to like not be afraid of change and not be afraid to really pursue things on your own.
Yeah, we all have a plan, but sometimes there's going to be detours and signs that take you in a different direction, and it's up to you to figure out either how to get back on the path or now realize you might be on a different road, and that's your new path. And it sounds like it's a combination of both. So I'm excited for you to keep going.
Yeah, definitely. And it was one of those things where I would kind of sit there and there was no option for me but to like find a way out on my own because I ran through all the doctors I possibly could. And here I am in this situation, right? As a physician, a patient now, and a consumer in terms of like trying supplements out, trying different things and different protocols. So,
Yeah, you're going
I
to
was,
have access to pretty much anybody
yeah,
through your network to say, who do I need to go see now because this isn't working? You're at the top of the food chain as it relates to connections in that field or in the medical field, at least.
exactly. And that was nice. That was really nice to see my colleagues and some of the people I worked with at the hospital come together and really try to help me out. But yeah, so long story short, I'm better now. I learned a lot about the microbiome, the way our mind is connected to our body in terms of your GI tract and how we are what we eat and the interactions you have with your environment, the people you're with, the food you eat, the water you drink, the air you breathe, all that stuff contributes to who you are. And that essentially led me to meet my co-founders, who actually I grew up with. They have their own agency, and they really wanted to start a gut health brand in terms of health and wellness, just like some of the competitors you see, like Seed, Ritual, Thorn, Viome, in that same fashion to create KLORA, which is where we are now. And that's how
Now,
it
did
started.
they want to start it specifically because of what you went through, or were they going to start it and then with knowing you and what you went through, they wanted you to become a partner?
I should give you some context on what happened. So during the pandemic, um, a good portion of my business in terms of clinical practice is surgery. So the operating rooms are closed for a few months during the pandemic, as everyone knows. And
Hmm.
I'm not someone who likes to sitting around, and it was bad. Like we were sitting around for like 3, 4 months plus 6 months where we just really weren't seeing patients. We're doing the whole telemedicine thing via Zoom, and it just wasn't my thing.
Hmm.
So I found an opportunity at Rutgers in New Jersey. They had a program for doctorate holders to go through a nutrition program and become clinical nutritionists. So using your uh, undergrad credits and your graduate credits towards a nutrition degree to become an RDN, a registered dietitian nutritionist in a clinical fashion. So I did that. I did that in a year. And during the time I was doing it, I learned about something called HMOs, human milk oligosaccharides. They're found in breast milk. And I was going through a flare or some sort of thing I was usually going through some sort of inflammation in my digestive tract. And HMOs are prebiotics that are found unique to mammals in terms of humans, and they act like prebiotics to help your microbiome and help a more robust immune system. That's why you hear kind of the notion of, hey, breastfed babies are healthier adults, they're smarter, this, that, whatever. one of the reasons why is because of these HMOs, human milk oligosaccharides, that I
Okay.
found in breast milk. Surprisingly, I was like, oh, I learned about this. It was a really fascinating subject in my class. And I was like, where can I get some HMOs that
Yeah.
isn't from breast milk, And
It's
one
probably
of
not a
the
sign you want to hold up on the street corner for,
exactly,
nursing
exactly.
mothers, right?
No, because it was so. I remember it being in class, and the professor was so convinced that this was so important for human biology. I was like, why isn't this sold as a human as like a adult supplement? Surprisingly, it's sold as a supplement, but to babies in infant formula. So I go to my Target, I get some baby formula. I start taking that when I was having flares, and I actually helped out a decent
Wow.
amount. One of the main HMOs in breast milk is called 2FL, 2-fucol-lactose. I'm not pronouncing it right, but it's 2-FL in case the audience wants to learn more about it. Anyway, so there's a backstory to this. I'm getting to the point. I grew up with two guys. Their names are John and Dan Snow. They're brothers. We were neighbors. Our families are close, and they're just really good guys. Dan is the younger brother. John and I went to school together, and Dan I kept running into in the city. He's an entrepreneur himself. He's built multiple businesses. He runs an agency called the Snow Agency and a media channel called Rap at Rap on Instagram, Rap TV. So it's a big company. He's a Forbes 30 under 30. Anyway, he's
Wow.
he's a very, very smart guy.
Yeah.
And because he's the younger brother of one of my best friends, you're kind of like, oh, hey, you say hi, but you don't really hang out with your best friend's younger brother much, right?
Yeah.
I kept running into him so often that I was like, hey, man, like, here's my number. Just if you're around, let me know. Like, we'll talk, we'll chat. He had some gut health issues. Started chatting me up. He's really into biohacking and longevity and, making himself the best version he can be physically and mentally. So we just connected immediately on that, just like John and I do. And he was having some gut health issues. I gave him some of the 2FL that I had. And he's like, hey, man, like, I love your enthusiasm for gut health and just microbiome research and kind of biohacking. We should start a direct consumer company because he's had experience doing that multiple times.
Yeah.
And he really wanted to. So we spent the next year building out this brand. It took a long time, but we basically did everything. We built the brand, got trademarked, built the whole supply chain, third party testing, you name it, we did it. We did it like the big boys, and that's why it took us so long to launch. But we've been in business almost like 11, 10 months now. So we're trying to scale the company now and doing pretty well.
I was gonna say, so do you almost feel like, and this is probably a terrible analogy, but like Clark Kent and Batman, where, during the day, or night, I mean, I know your schedule isn't just an 8 to 4, 8 to 5 job as far as being a surgeon. So you have a crazy schedule as far as surgery now, post COVID, you're back, I'm sure, full gamut. And then you have this business that you're CEO of getting off the ground. How do you balance, I guess what's your immediate, what you were planning to go for school for, what you got your specialization in, and now what you've gone through to determine how much energy and where your focus is? How hard is that to balance, and what does that look like for you?
Yeah, it's just basically being on your phone and on an app called Slack all day
Yeah.
during. I try not to do it obviously during office hours when I'm seeing patients because that's my focus. But generally on the weekends, I catch up. I'm on the computer basically all night, and it's not bad. I'm not complaining by any means. It's fun because it's like a game, right? You want to kind of see what ads work, what price margins work, what different angles work in terms of your gut health, microbiome research goes, and packaging, supply chain, new product, third party testing, like all that stuff is really just, it's a nightmare. Don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
but it's interesting to learn about. And now that I've learned it pretty well with the help of my co-founders, I feel confident in any sort of other venture I go into in this e-commerce or consumer world, which is what I plan to do full time eventually.
That's great. And you going back a little bit to your story, you talked about your network, your friends, and really a friend of or a brother to one of your good friends. Was it something that you think would have came to fruition, meaning this business, if you weren't so passionate behind yourself and the benefits you saw? Because there's some people that look at something and go, hey, that's a good business, but they're not really passionate. So it's not something they want to be fully invested in. And all the time and energy that it takes for you to be invested, do you think this would be something that would have led you to the same outcome if you didn't go through the struggles you went through? Or do you think maybe you still could have been here?
Yeah, I've always, like I said, I've always had an interest in business. E-commerce wasn't really my thing until Dan and John approached me, and now it kind of is.
Yeah.
So I don't think it would have happened if I didn't suffer through what I did, because I learned so much about the human brain, the human body, perseverance, immune system, like not giving up on yourself, having dark thoughts, all that stuff, and I was the happiest kid in the world. I have great friends and family. There's no reason for me to be upset about this, and I never really was. But when you're 110 pounds and you're dying and you can't digest anything you're eating, um,
Yeah.
you can't sleep. That was the worst part. I mean, I have a high pain tolerance now, which is awesome. But when you
Yeah.
when you can't sleep and you have to go see 40 patients and then go do surgery that night, and then you have to do it all over again the next day sometimes. I have a pretty light schedule. Don't get me wrong, but some days were like that, and it was really difficult. Worse, more than anything, I mean, I do care about my appearance and how I'm perceived with others, just because that's
Yeah.
just part of my job, and not
Yeah.
looking the way I'm normal, not feeling the way I looked, sitting down in my car and having my butt hurt because my nerves were like exposed because I was that thin, or
Yeah.
not my nerves are exposed. It was just I had no body fat. It was rough. It really took a toll on my self esteem and just my outlook and kind of like why is this happening to me? I would say that a lot to myself. And then years go by, like 2 3 years went by, and I was just like, this is just my life right now. I don't know what to do. And the cool thing was, and I hope like the listeners can understand this a little bit, that if you are going through something, every 3 months or so, something new would pop up, right? I would go see a doctor. He would have new medication. He or she would have new medication, or there'd be new blood tests I can do. Or I might be like, hey, I might have this disease or that disease. And I would have a hope. So I would go on new medication. I would have a hope for 3 months, be like, hey, maybe I'm gaining weight. Maybe I'm feeling better. It never
Yeah.
came to be until like recently. But uh, that hope was something I really held on to. And really understanding my body, really understanding the food sourcing that we were eating from. What's really crazy, and I'm sure the listeners can relate to this, is the price of everything is going up. However, the quality of everything is going down in terms of food. And
Hmm.
I believe the same is happening with people on a micro scale. People are getting prettier on the outside and uglier on the inside.
Interesting. I've
People,
never heard anybody describe it like that.
yeah.
Why do you think
And
that?
obviously, part of it, social media and the perceptions that we put upon ourselves with
Yeah.
how we post and stuff like this. And this is obviously a pessimistic view, but I don't believe this. But my optimist view is there's like Gen Z and millennials are so creative. They're have such passion for life that I think a lot of them will come. There'll be a pendulum swinging the other way too, where we'll have a better outlook and better upbringing, uprising of like, hey, we don't want to eat this bad food. Hey, look, we care about our food sourcing. We care about our mental health. We care about our community. We care about our families. We don't care about this material stuff. We don't care about some of these short dopamine spikes that we're getting through media, scrolling, drugs,
Hmm.
vaping, whatever it might be. So I have an optimist view on where things will be going in the near
Yeah.
future.
I'm glad you said that. Like I said, I've never really thought of it like that. And one thing that you did bring up from a sales perspective, I would say is, we all go through struggles. Obviously, your struggle is unique to you. And I'm really appreciative that you were willing to share your story and your struggles, because I think we all have demons. And I know somebody else said this: just because somebody else's struggles don't look or don't seem that bad to somebody else, it doesn't mean it's not the worst to them. And something as little as losing a deal in sales at that point could be crushing for someone, just because they may have, their first house that they're looking to buy with money they thought they were going to get, or maybe they have kids that are sick and nobody knows behind the scenes this type of stress they're going through, or maybe it's relationships. So I think it's important to know, you said there's hope. And I think it's important to have people in your life that you can count on. When you were going through those challenges and struggles, did you feel like it was something you could share with people, or is it something that you kept in to yourself?
Yeah, I I definitely shared it initially with a lot of my friends and family, my parents, my brother, and close friends. And then I stopped talking about it after 2 years. After I just was like, I have to figure this out on my own.
Yeah.
But one thing I learned was everyone is struggling with something. On the outside, my life looked perfect, but if you knew me personally, you'd be like, well, if you saw me in person, you'd be like, wow, this guy's not looking good. He doesn't look healthy. So,
Yeah.
and I was new to practice. I didn't really understand the full scope of what people go through in terms of dealing with patients. You see 20 to 30 patients a day, 4 days a week. After a few years, a few months of that, you get a good perspective on how people are in terms of human nature and what they struggle with. And
Yeah.
everyone's going through something. I don't care if you're a celebrity. I don't care if you're dirt poor or you're in chronic disease. Everyone's struggling with something mentally, physically that they're going through, and a lot of them walk in silence and they don't realize it. For example, one of the things that I was struggling with was gaining weight just from my appearance alone and just from my nutrition. And I remember people constantly telling me like, "Hey, you look really thin. Eat something." And that
Hmm.
really pissed me off because I remember one time I filmed myself for a whole week eating, just so my doctors would believe me. Not that they didn't, but just for myself in a way, like a video log.
Yeah, like
I
I'm
would,
not stupid, people. I know what if that was the simple answer, I'd be doing it right here. I am.
yeah, and for like 3 weeks, I ate 10,000 calories a day, and it's
Right.
really difficult to do. For any bodybuilder that you can probably talk to will say that's insane. And I would microwave ice cream. I would make protein shakes. I would take muscle mass gainers. You name it, I did it. I would eat burgers all day. Like just anything I possibly could to convince people that I was eating really well in terms of a caloric um, surplus. But yeah, so it makes you a little bit more appreciative of people's just journey as in life. Like, hey, don't judge someone. Really um, give them the benefit of the doubt. People treat others the way they feel inside. And on days I didn't feel well, it showed. I tried to
Hmm.
keep my mode on when I was at work, but when I was back at home, when I was really struggling with my health, it showed for sure. And I would try to put on a pretty face or a smile, and it was hard to do when you're really struggling. So more than ever, people are struggling right now, whether it's financially, whether it's mentally. Post pandemic, but life in America is not good.
Yeah.
It's not that it's not good. I love this country. I love living here. I think it is optimist view on everything. But from what I can tell, with inflation and things going around with macroeconomic situation that you can't control, people are struggling. And it's good to be the person in someone's life, whether it's a stranger or a friend, to be optimistic, to show people compassion and sympathy, and talk about stuff like this, like sales and entrepreneurship and hope, right? Like things
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to the next year because I have these companies that are starting and my health is great now, and like I'm really optimistic about people around me and trying to spread that energy around us. So
Yeah. No, and I wanted to talk to you. Personally, my story, I think I told you when we connected at first. I found out through a blood test that I don't have celiac disease, but I have a strong intolerance to gluten. So for me, I struggled for years. Cut out dairy, I cut out red meats, and it, you probably couldn't tell, but I know how I was feeling internally, and I felt awful almost all the time. And just finding that information out and making that change in my life made me feel like a different person. Just fatigue and some brain fog that I was dealing with. It just felt like everything that I was consuming was like trash. And it felt like my body was trying to process trash. So, for anybody out there that's listening to this, with what you're doing and what your company's doing, what are signs of issues that you see results in that help with, I want to say, this daily dosage that you're providing to them? Like, can you talk a little bit about that and what your vision is for what they may see as far as a result?
yeah, so as far as KLORA goes,
Yes.
KLORA, the company, which thought was a cool name, like Clean Flora, KLORA, and it was trademarkable.
Hmm.
But the two SKUs that we created are things that really helped me and Dan out a lot, and things that we thought that were missing in the market. The first is a digestive enzyme. When you're eating, and uh, digestion starts in the mouth with an enzyme called salivary amylase, which breaks down carbohydrates. So chewing your food is really important. Being present, looking at your food instead of the TV, or being distracted by other things is really important. The mind muscle connection, the mind body connection is really important when you're eating. And then the food moves down to your stomach, where stomach acid and other digestive enzymes start digestive process for your small intestine, where things are absorbed. So this whole process is really important. And if something's wrong with your upper GI, your stomach, your duodenum, your pancreas, your bile, these are all portions of the upper gastrointestinal tract that are important for nutrient absorption, then things may be bad in the lower GI. And that's something that some doctors just don't make a connection with. And something I made a connection with. So the first SKU is a digestive enzyme that you can take with food or right before eating a meal that helps that process out, helps break down some of the um, proteins like milk protein, plant protein, carbohydrates, meats, stuff like that. Uh, I take it when I eat out. A lot of food, when you eat at restaurants, you don't really know the source of it and you don't know what's in there. So I just take a digestive enzyme to help the digestive process. And that really helps with bloating, indigestion, constipation, stuff like that. And a lot of the digestive enzymes on the market are made from ox bile or animal proteins or animal sources, I should say. So we made one from a vegan source, plant-based sources that vegans can take and people that are just sensitive can take. And I think
Hmm.
it's a really great product. And it was doing really, really well. So we're trying to scale that. The second is a really interesting product. One of the ingredients is 2FL, the HMOs I mentioned earlier, which I think
Yep.
is unique. We're one of the only companies offering that in a pill form. And then why is the microbiome, why are pre and probiotics really important? So prebiotics are the fiber and the different starches and things like that that help feed the microbiome, the probiotics in your body, right? Probiotics are the good, healthy bacteria that produce a response and give balance in your gut, the large intestine, where the microbiome lives. And then there's something called postbiotics, which is a general term for short chain fatty acids, the byproduct of the microbiome and some of these good bacteria. And this is the main fuel source for the digestive cells that line the GI tract of the colon where the microbiome lives. This is important because that cell wall is only one cell thick. There's different blocks of cells, and the interior, or the I should say the exterior, the tube of your digestive system is surrounded by these one cell thick walls. And everyone's heard of leaky gut. The notion is that sometimes when this cell wall is compromised, things leak into the bloodstream, the internal system, causing inflammation, other pathologies, including the mind muscle and mind brain connection. So we created or we included in that pill the 2FL, which is the prebiotic from quote unquote breast milk. It's not from breast milk, it's from a lab. And then postbiotic butyrate, being the main one that the microbiome produces in one pill in a dual capsule formula. And that's a daily thing you can take 5 to 7 days a week. That really helps with your skin health. I
Okay.
noticed that when I was really having gut health issues, my skin was really bad and it was like aging fast. It was really, really weird. And ever since I corrected that, my skin's like been perfect. It's been better than I
Yeah.
was as a teenager. And I'm gonna be 36 soon, so I think I look pretty good for that age. Um,
I'll be the first one here to say you look pretty good, man. I would have never known by looking at you that not too long ago you were weighing, just over 100 pounds and struggling like you did. So just from the image, I know looks alone can't tell somebody how they feel, but I can definitely comment that you look extremely healthy and I'm sure too, like you're not just coming off of a 5-day vacation, you're working a lot, doing
yeah,
a
yeah,
lot.
yeah, exactly. I'm working a
So
lot, but my body's
so
strong.
So really what it comes down to from your business is you recognize that gut health is important for people to take seriously. A lot starts in the gut. And if they want to have maybe prevent some really chronic issues, whether it's maybe showing themselves today or later in life, if you're not taking care of your gut, down the road, you're going to see some things pop up. Is that fair to say?
That's absolutely fair to say, and I would say it's very accurate. More and more research is coming out showing that the microbiome, the diversity of the microbiome, and the interaction with it and the rest of the body has a big role in autoimmune disease, in aging, and how we feel, even in things like antidepressants. There's something called SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. One of the main byproducts of the microbiome is, guess what? Serotonin. Most of your serotonin or a lot of your serotonin neurotransmitters are made in the gut. Not a surprise that some people that take antidepressants like SSRIs have issues with weight, have issues with the mental disease, have issues with digestive system, because it's all related.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was at my worst, I would have these really like I'll have a great day, I'd be working hard, and even though I was sick, whatever, I would still try to be happy, and I would have a great day, and then I would go to bed and I would have like horrendous nightmares, like like horrible, the worst nightmare you can think of in terms of horror movie, like
Yeah. Your biggest fears come to real life, but just amplified or
yeah,
just,
exactly.
yeah.
It was vivid. It was horrendous, and
Yeah.
I
No
really
wonder you didn't sleep well. Nick, you're probably scared to go to sleep. Like this
it
is
was bad,
gonna have
man.
night terrors.
But the reason why was because my gut microbiome or something was wrong with my gut. My digestive
Yeah.
system was off, and that's why I was having these nightmares because it wasn't related to anything I was doing. It wasn't related to really anything. It was that. So yeah, I think more and more research is coming out showing that the microbiome plays a big role, and just digestive system alone plays a big role in aging. Um, I can go on and on about that, but
No, yeah. I wanted to talk about a couple other subjects because I know, like I said, you're busy and I don't want to take your entire evening. But a couple things that really stuck out to me is, um, you said you always had interest in business, but not necessarily wasn't your career path. So I wanted to know, like, has there been anything that stuck out to you as far as what you learned about business that you could, tell somebody as far as your venture into it, or if there's a specific story behind, what you've learned as you've learned all these new things and the journey that took you here to KLORA specifically?
yeah, I think when you're first entering like this entrepreneurship type of thing, you're super excited. You want to tell everyone about it. You want to like share your story and all that stuff. But it's hard. It's easy to get distracted into the moment, and um, it's hard to. There's like this funny graphic. It shows like the founder journey, and it's like pre-launch, everyone's like super happy and this and that, whatever, and then post-launch, it's like it just dips down all the way down into like the depths of hell until
Yeah.
you're profitable, and then it's like you have a spike again, and then you're like Series A, and then it spikes down again. So that's really the journey. It's like I remember I've had a lot of friends with startups even before this started, no pun intended, and they were all like, "You sure you want to do this, man?" I was like, "No, come on, dude, I can do this. I've been through worse."
Yeah.
They're like, "You sure? You sure?" This and that, and I would just kind of brush it off. And don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining. I've loved everything that's happened to me. It's fantastic, and I really like the journey. I still do, but it's not easy. It's not for everyone.
Now,
You have
did
to
you
be.
ever get to the point? I mean, because you have, let's face it, you have a career that you could fall back on and just say, you know what? I'm a surgeon. I don't have to do this. I'm doing it because I choose to do this. Maybe I'll do it in a couple of years. Maybe I'll stop now. Did you ever have a thought of hitting the brakes or maybe just, putting it away and just putting it off to the side? Or is that never something that crossed
No,
your mind?
never. Can't give up,
Okay.
man.
No, I
Discomfort is
love
the
it.
price we pay for a meaningful life. You have to put
Yeah.
yourself through the ringer unless you're going to get results. And plus, like I want to be set before I'm 40. I want to really have a great life. And I
Yeah.
already have a fantastic life, but I want to be able to, one of the things to go on a tangent, if you're a physician, if you're any sort of clinician, you can't scale yourself. You can be the best doctor, surgeon, whatever in the world, nurse, doesn't matter. You can only see 40, 50 patients a day. You can't scale yourself. Even if you hire someone else, you can train them in your image, but still, it's not you. The best way to scale something is to impact more people. So for me, I was like, hey, I can go into nutrition. I can affect more people with doing lectures online or go into this like biohacking health and wellness world instead of just podiatry and foot and ankle surgery. And then this core thing happened. I was like, hey, I can scale people in the millions, in the hundreds of thousands each
Yeah.
year, each month. And that's really what made the difference to me. Is like, hey, like I can. This is how you really make it. Is you scale yourself in a proper way.
Well, it's interesting you say that. I know from the sales perspective, there's some people out there that say like, why do you post on LinkedIn or why are you constantly putting messaging out? And one thing I heard from somebody that stuck with me is, do people follow Elon Musk or do people follow Tesla? And the fact is, you have to have a personal brand and people have to know what you're about. And you have to be committed to why you're doing it or who you are and making sure people are aware of that because anything can change. And you made a point to COVID, you know, that was unprecedented from the standpoint of who would have thought that you would be, in all fairness, not able to do your job for months. And that's a reality check to say, again, not that that's going to happen again next year or next month, but you can't take anything for granted. Nothing's guaranteed. What happens if you got in an accident and you couldn't perform surgeries, right? Like then you start thinking about all these thoughts that go through your head and saying, yeah, I can't just put my life on pause and wait till I'm 50 to do the next adventure. And I'm glad you shared that story because I think a lot of people can reflect and also just relate, knowing that, man, I'm 36 myself. I'm gonna be 37 in a couple of months. It doesn't feel like I've been on this earth for 37. Have I accomplished everything I want to do? So you, by telling your story, is really impactful for me hearing it because it makes you reflect and say, don't wait, keep pushing, and that's awesome.
Yeah, and don't delay gratification. Everyone wants to wait until they're 40, 45, or whatever. I'm just throwing numbers out there, but uh, the more and more I listen to health leaders and people that I'm inspired by, the more I see like a notion of, hey man, live your life now. Like go on that trip, buy that car, do the thing within reason. Do the
Mm-hmm.
things you want to do. Be around the people you really love. Don't let work take over because you never know what could happen. And I'm definitely trying to take that ethos into mind, even with the startup stuff. Is trying to go on the trips I want to go on, meet the people I want to meet, do stuff like this, which I really enjoy, by the way. Thank you for having me, Jeff.
No, man, this
um,
is great.
yeah,
Yeah.
so that it's really important not to, yeah, have a focus, have purpose in life. That's really important. I think what makes people really happy is purpose more than anything else, more than money,
Yeah.
more than all that stuff. Obviously, being healthy, but having a purpose in life, being purpose driven. My purpose right now is to scale this business and become a leader in health and wellness education for people, Gen Z, millennials.
I wanted to ask because a lot of times people say that family wants the best for their, parents want the best for their kids. And, when I went to college, I knew I wanted to do something in business. I wasn't too sure what that was. My dad said, do accounting. It's a language of business. I hated accounting, but I made it through. Was the medical field something that your family wanted you to get into? Was that something that they saw you had an interest in and just pushed you? And the reason why I asked that is it seems to me that there's a lot of people that have family that want them to get really good education, and you have gotten maybe more education than most people in the medical field and kept pushing. Has that started from a young age, or is that just something that developed over time?
The good thing of my parents was they never really forced anything. They just wanted us not to be. We were never poor growing up, but we definitely struggled in my early life when I was younger, and I just never wanted that to happen ever again. Whether
Yeah,
it's for me, my brother, my parents, I never really wanted to pursue wealth by any means, but I definitely always wanted to have something that was guaranteed in a way, right? I could have went to business. I could have been a finance bro, or not that there's anything wrong with that. I love my finance friends, but
yeah,
it's a little bit more of a lucrative path earlier on in terms of age range. Um, but I really like working with my hands. I really like working with people, and I just wanted something that had that in the mix. I originally
yeah,
went to school for architecture. I wanted to be an architect and build homes and be a contractor of some sorts. I don't know what pathway that would have led me to, but when I was starting school, 2008, 2009 was a housing crisis. And in my head, I'm like, I don't want to be behind a desk at 45 years old regretting my life because I couldn't make it because of macroeconomic events. So I
hmm,
wanted something guaranteed. I wanted something that I enjoyed, which I really do. I sincerely enjoy my job. And it's going to be a shame when I leave because I'm planning to do that soon as soon
yeah,
as the stuff scales. But that's the nature of scalability, right? You can't scale yourself as a physician, as a clinician. You can scale yourself in something else. And that was another reason why, right? Like I noticed that you can't really, there's limited options with different career paths. And I didn't want that.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned about like finding your passion, and now I would say your passion hasn't changed. It's helping people, right? Your passion has been about helping people. It started off, in surgery. You're still doing it, and now it's maybe helping people on a grander scale, just because you can reach more people. Do you feel as if that passion has changed at all now that you're getting closer to exiting surgery, or does that passion still, inside of you? Like, how do you summon that passion? Because you're working a ton of hours. I mean, I know you're healthier than you were, but you're still working an obscene amount of time. How do you keep that passion going enough to keep pushing you? Is there a light at the end of the tunnel that you just keep reaching for? What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, launching this company was really exciting. Now it's about scaling and making sure it's one of the big boys. So that keeps me going. I think seeing the feedback I get from customers is really nice. Like I think our products are some of the best on the market personally,
Hmm.
and the excitement of because I want KLORA to be a health and wellness brand, not just a gut health brand. So we have three pillars of mind, body, gut. So we want to build SKUs in anti-aging. We want to build SKUs for the mind. We have a big vision for in-home testing and genomics. So yeah, I have like these thoughts in my head, but have to be patient about it and make sure that we're doing things step by step. So right now, the goal is to scale the company. I think what drives me the most is the idea of like, hey, I'm meeting so many cool people in just the past year being a startup founder in health and wellness
Yeah,
and doing things that are unique to um, people's pain points is also really encouraging too, because as someone who has struggled for 4 or 5 years with what I went through, there's a few brands that I looked up to that inspired me to create KLORA that really kind of gave me that hope and that outlook like, hey, maybe this could help me feel better today or
yeah.
just support my health in a way or give me some information that I didn't have before.
Well, there's no doubt. I mean, from my seat, I'm sure other people's perspective is when you have a CEO that can relate to not only the passion but have the personal story that you went through, and connect to the mission so strongly because you know what it felt like to walk in those shoes, it's hard not to get behind you and not hard to want to see you do well and also try the product, especially if you're struggling, because you have a great story. And I'm so happy that you were willing to share it with everybody that listens to this episode. And again, this is a sales based podcast, but I meant it when I said it when I started this. If you're not feeling your best, it's really hard to do anything well. And you said your mind, your body. I think a lot of people now are more in tune with mental health
Yeah.
than they used to be, and they're willing to share some of the struggles that maybe 10 years ago people were unwilling to. I know personally, even within my own relationship, I think it's important to let people know, like, hey, I had a bad day. It's tough to, when you're in that grind mode, to maybe have those conversations with people. So taking the time to just let people know that are close to you, hey, I'm not feeling the best. I had a rough day. In today's world, you mentioned it, whether it's post-COVID or technology, all the things that are constantly facing us. It's just really important that we tell people when we need help or if when we're not at our best.
Yeah, creating a support system is really good. You'll know who your friends are when you succeed and do well. The ones that are jealous aren't really your friends.
Yeah.
The ones that support you even when you're sick are really, really the best ones to keep around you. But that's life, man. People go through all that, just in general.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to ask you a couple questions I ask everybody. Um, I know you're in the medical field, but now you're also the businessman. You're CEO, so I don't want to discredit that either. Is there any? I mean, listen, I know you work a lot. Is there any books that you've read or any podcasts you've listened to, besides selling stories, of course, that you would recommend for somebody out there?
Uh, I think I'm trying to see if I have any books here um, that I've read recently that are like business oriented. But I listen to a lot of health and wellness podcasts. Honestly, like I'm big
Yeah.
on Andrew Huberman. Uh, Atia is really good. David Sinclair from Harvard. These are all things that Let's say you're really healthy and you can do the same amount of work in 7 hours that someone who's unhealthy does in 13. That makes a huge difference in your lifestyle and the way you act, in your even in your outlook with your company, right? So there's actually a company that one of my friends started. It's called Superpower. They're doing basically biohacking and for CEOs and entrepreneurs and startup founders because they believe exactly that. Like, hey, if you're a businessman, you and your team and your employees should be the best they can be health wise. That way you can perform better. Just like that analogy I gave you, working 6 hours instead of 12, or getting the same amount of work done in 6 versus 12.
Yeah.
So I think if you're a businessman or an entrepreneur, you should really focus on your health first,
No, it
especially base
makes
health. Yeah.
ton of sense. And in the business that I'm in, we use the word automation for a lot
Mhm.
because there's a labor shortage. So if you look at available resources and there's any process you can automate, even if it's expensive up front, you look at the ROI and think to yourself, time is a perfect example. You only have a finite amount of time. Every person on this earth has the same amount in a day that's available to them. We all don't know how many years we're going to have on it. And clearly you're somebody that cares about trying to live as long as you can, and by making choices and the things you put in your body, maybe have more than others. But if you look at that and think about certain processes that you do each day, and you mentioned social media as an example, I'll give people my perspective on it. There's a lot out there, and there's some people that sit on their phone for hours and just digest information that doesn't really make them better, and that's fine if that's what they're into. But I look at automation, or in your case, what they're talking about, as what can I look at my life to simplify and put on a regular plan that I don't have to worry about because I have enough to worry about. And so that topic is very interesting to me.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely automate as much as you can. Get VAs if you need to. Definitely don't look at your phone the first 2 hours you're waking up because there's something called a fun story. I'm going to go on a little tangent. I think it's really interesting.
Yes, do it. It's
But if you,
stories.
yeah, yeah. So one of the things that is driven by every decision you make is dopamine. There's still a neurotransmitter that spikes when you're feeling good or you're motivated to do something. And that pool, let's say you have a cup, right? A pool of dopamine like this cup, and it's full during the first hour you wake up, and then throughout the day it just empties until the end of the day it's like this. Just give
Hmm.
you like a rough analogy. This is not what actually happens to your body, but kind of like a good analogy to understand. If you deplete that kind of motivation the first 2 hours you wake up when you're by scrolling on your phone on TikTok or scrolling on Instagram Reels or whatever it might be, being distracted. The second you wake up, you're not going to feel good at the end of the day. However, if you limit it, if you try to really discipline yourself by not doing that the first thing you wake up or limiting that throughout the day, you will have a better pool at the end of the day to like kind of be motivated by. One of the cool things that, as an experiment, everyone that is listening can do at home is go to Google, go to YouTube, and type in any children's show and watch a clip. One of the examples I can give you right now is Paw Patrol. Type in a Paw Patrol clip, and let me tell you, every scene that you have on that show at any time during the day or during during the filming won't last more than 3 to 5 seconds, because every time there's a new scene, a new dopamine spike hits, drawing your attention to the scene. So it'd be a scene like two dogs talking, and it'd be like scene here on the side angle, then top angle, then left angle, and it will change every 3 to 5 seconds because it keeps the child's attention, which makes the show more addicting. And the same thing's happening when we're scrolling on Instagram. The same things happen when we're scrolling on TikTok. Every time there's a new feed, a new video, a new image, dopamine's being spiked and your attention is being drawn to that screen.
Interesting. Yeah, very interesting. I know me personally, going back a few years, what you said is really relating to me as you say it out loud, because the first thing I did when I woke up in the morning was go on Facebook, and I noticed how angry I was getting every day, because at that time there was a lot of political posts that people were putting up, and I was just, the feeling I was getting from what, like just hearing from people I didn't care about, right? I was just getting the most confrontational post you can imagine in front of my face to start my day. And I had that revelation. I'm like, why am I putting myself in such a terrible mood to start my day? And I noticed it drug with me, because that was the first thing that hit my mind. And I'm like, if this is gonna be the first thing that hits my mind, it's gonna set the tone for my day. And immediately after that, I started recognizing my ability just to wake up and do a workout. And I can tell you again, for probably 4 years, I was off Facebook, and it was literally because of how I was feeling to start my day. So what you're telling me right now, and I should have prefaced this whole episode, I am not a doctor, so any advice that I give is by no means has any medical backing. So it's just my opinion, but that really relates.
Yeah, and it makes a big difference for sure.
What I wanted to ask you is, if there's somebody that's interested in learning more about you or your business, where can they find more about you, and where can they find more about KLORA?
Yeah, I'm actually on TikTok at the handle app prescriber, just like it sounds. I haven't
Okay.
posted in over a year, but I used to post health and wellness stuff there. I'll probably start doing that again when I have some time. My business is getklora.com. That's GETKLORA. We have the two SKUs I mentioned right now, the digestive enzymes and the gut renew, which is the probiotic replacement.
I feel like there's some segue to that at some point in the future. You say the words right now, so I feel like
Yeah,
there's more to come for sure, right?
definitely. Yeah, for sure. We're gonna have a whole like set of really innovative science first,
Yeah,
high end stuff for the regular consumer.
it's
One of the
awesome.
things that I really loved doing was researching on these new molecules and these new like protocols that for anti-aging and just gut health in general. Because if you think about anti-aging, it sounds sexy, but what it really means is like preserving yourself and making sure you're healthy up until the time you die. There's something called blue zones around the world. There are areas where people that live over 100 are still functional, healthy, happy, loving, and they study these people and they look at their diets and their whole environment. And real quick, the three pillars for biohacking I have, in case anyone wants to know, it's got microbiome, nutrition, so everything you're eating, your microbiome, digestive system, the fuel you put in your body.
Hmm.
Second pillar would be environment, so like your water, the environment you sleep in, air quality, things you touch, clothing, everything that touches you, toxins, you name it, the people you surround yourself with, all that stuff. And then the third is sleep, because sleep is so important. Sleep cadence, sleep time, sleep depth, um, sleep environment, all that stuff.
Now
So
I gotta ask a question to that, because one of the things as I'm talking to you is, how do you shut your brain off? Because I think a lot of us struggle with that just day to day. There's so much going through our mind. So is there anything like tips that you have for people out there, or something that you use to help you decompress and kind of have your mind be at ease before you try to sleep?
yeah, Just like I don't look at the phone the first 2 hours is exaggerating. I'll be honest with you. I don't look at the phone the first hour, hour and a half at most. Then I get
Okay.
and I want to look at it. So that's number
Yeah.
one. Number two is not looking at a computer screen at least an hour before bed, because it just destroys your circadian rhythm and blue light. Really, blue light blockers help slightly, I would say. Um, I have something called an 8 sleep. It's really interesting. It's a mattress cover that has water running through in little pockets that cools you while you're in deep sleep. Having
Interesting.
a cool mattress and a cool sleeping environment is very important for deep sleep. So I wake up pretty refreshed because of that. I eat really well. I eat nutrient dense food, wild caught fish, pasture raised meats. All my produce is organic and local. I don't eat 3 hours before bed. That's really important too. When I
Ooh.
do, when I do eat, I definitely have digestive issues or nightmares or less of a deep sleep. That's really important. I think people ignore that. Obviously, when you're going out to dinner and you're partying, whatever, like which I do every now and then, it's just part of the game. But throughout the week,
Yeah.
I don't do that.
Yeah, no, that's great news. Great information to share. And I know for, like I said in the beginning, whether you're in sales or you're just somebody that's listening to this podcast, there's things that are super important for you to take away from this. And one is make sure that you're evaluating your gut health, your mental health, and some of the things you talked about today, and your business specifically. I'm excited to see where it goes. I know you've ramped up really, I'd say quick. I know you said you went through a lot of the proper channels to make sure that when you hit that accelerator, you could really ramp up. But there's a lot of exciting things to happen for you and your business in a short amount of time. I'm going to ask you now, before you get too famous for me to afford you on this show, would you make a commitment maybe to do a second episode later on in 2023 or 2024 just to get an update and find out more about the stuff you're doing?
Of course, man, your grandfather. Then I'll never have an
Yes.
ego in regards to podcasts or information with health and wellness. I don't think I've always been really excited to talk about this stuff, and I probably always will. So what doesn't matter. Money won't change me, and it won't change the course of the business either.
Well, no, I like I said, get KLORA. Your organization has such a and fantastic mission. Just to have everybody get behind it's easy. There's some people out in business, and you're like, ugh, I don't know if I can get behind that. Yours is simple and it's personal to me because again, something as small as not being able to eat, gluten, which again, still people to this day, like I let me put this out there for the record for anybody. I can be extremely unhealthy and still be gluten free. I think there's some misconception behind that. And people look at me as like, can you eat that? And I'm like, yes, it's meat. There's no gluten in meat. So it's funny because I think somebody that, like myself, who now doesn't eat any gluten, and if I do, it's a big mistake and I feel the effects of it. There's a lot of things out there that people just don't understand, which to some, I'm sure in your world, you look at it and be like, oh my gosh, like, why wouldn't you do this? Why wouldn't you do that? But I think there's a misconception that people are educated in a lot. And I think it's important that people listen to these things that you bring up today because it's extremely important. Even the whole aspect of not eating 3 hours before bed. I mean, that's something that we all can do. It's easier said than done, but it's important to know what effects I may have by the decisions I make and what I'm going to feel like the next day if I don't follow some guidelines or listen to your advice. So that was fantastic. I'm not going to eat anything after this episode. I can promise you that. I'll drink water and
Water's
try not
fine.
to look at
Yeah,
my phone.
water, tea. Drink. If you really need to have like maybe half an egg or something, but really try
Yeah.
to eliminate the food before bed. Late night eating is. I mean, listen, I ate late at night for years. I just love eating. And
Yeah.
you get cravings late at night when you're in front of the computer and you're just destroyed. So that's normal, but discipline yourself not to do that. When you feel better and it accumulates, it's kind of like working out, right? You work out 4 days a week. After a month, you're like, man, I really don't want to skip a day now because I feel so good.
Sure.
I have all this energy now. It's the same thing with these habits. Food inequality is a real thing. Food education is a real thing. Myself including, I wasn't educated on all this stuff until recently. So you can't blame anyone for their mishaps. You can't blame anyone for the disease states they're in. It's sometimes people. A lot of people are unaware. Every day, I have patients coming in that are horribly diabetic, uh, without really being aware. Like, hey, I'm eating my culture's food. This is something that was passed down generations in terms of our recipes and stuff like that. But I'm like, food quality has changed. Our ingredients have changed. The disease states have changed, and they're just not educated on it. So we
Yeah.
have to really be vigilant to protect our friends and family, protect our community, and tell them and help spread the word on, hey, like your health is really important to me, and I want to make sure that you are educated, or you're, have access to good food and good resources to help yourself.
That's fantastic. Well, again, man, I really appreciate you taking the time to do this podcast. And there's so much information for people to unravel. I would suggest that people listen to maybe this episode 2 times, because some of the information that you've gone through is something that's that important to really finding success in life, because you'll be able to feel your best. And I definitely want to be a consumer of your product. So I definitely have to get on the bandwagon. So I look forward to that as well.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it.
All right, man. Well, listen, you're my first doctor, so I appreciate, Dr. Kirten taking the time here today to do this episode. Again, this is Jeff Hillen with Selling Stories. Everybody, stay healthy and make sure you have a great day.